The morning sun glinted off the steel and glass structures of Naval Special Warfare Training Center in San Diego. America's premier training facility for the most elite warriors sprawled across the coastline where the relentless Pacific waves crashed against concrete barriers. For decades, these grounds had forged America's finest warriors as men who had carried out missions in every corner of the globe, from the jungles of Vietnam to the mountains of Afghanistan. Lieutenant Mei Lin moved through the pre-dawn darkness with practiced silence. At 28, her slight frame belied the strength within. Standing just 5'4", she was a study in contradictions, small yet formidable, quiet yet commanding. The morning air carried the salt of the ocean as she completed her fifth mile breath, forming small clouds in the chill. Most trainees were still in their bunks, gathering precious sleep before the punishing day ahead. But May had always preferred these solitary hours. From his office window in Building Alpha, Colonel James Harrison observed her lone figure circling the track. At 67, Harrison's weathered face told the story of a life spent in service to his country. Deep lines mapped his features, each one earned through 27 years as a Navy SEAL from the muddy waters of the Mekong Delta to the sun-scorched deserts of Iraq. His silver hair, once black as midnight during his days in Vietnam, was cut regulation short. The younger officers called him the Old Eagle behind his back. He pretended not to hear, but secretly took pride in the nickname. Keeping tabs on our unusual recruit, the voice came from behind him. Harrison didn't turn. Just observing Mike. That's what they pay me for these days. To watch and advise. Chief Petty Officer Mike Peterson moved to stand beside Harrison at the window. At 45, Peterson was still in peak physical condition, his frame solid and imposing. He'd served with SEAL Team 6 for 15 years before accepting a position as lead instructor. She shouldn't be here, Peterson said, watching May complete another lap, 5 foot 420 pounds soaking wet. This isn't about equality or fairness, it's about combat effectiveness. Harrison's expression remained neutral. You might be surprised what comes in small package, Mike. With respect, sir, I've been in combat. Size matters when you're carrying a wounded teammate through hostile territory. Harrison nodded thoughtfully. So does heart, so does intelligence, so does adaptability. He turned from the window. The world changes. We either change with it or become obsolete. Peterson's jaw tightened. Some things shouldn't change, sir. The standards that keep our operators alive downrange shouldn't bend for political correctness. Who said anything about bending standards? Harrison asked, mildly retrieving his coffee mug, emblazoned with the SEAL trident. Lieutenant Lin has met every qualification so far. Barely, Peterson muttered. Harrison took a slow sip from his mug eyes, returning to the solitary figure circling the track. Sometimes barely is enough. I barely made it out of Da Nang in 75. Barely survived an ambush outside Fallujah in 04. Barely is still alive. Peterson sighed. Point taken, sir, but I still think that's enough, Chief. Harrison cut him off, his tone suddenly firm. Lieutenant Lin deserves the same chance as any other candidate. Judge her on her performance, not your preconceptions. Peterson nodded stiffly. Yes, sir. He hesitated, then added, the Neptune's Trident exercise is scheduled for day 800. Full tactical simulation, live ammunition on the shooting range portion. I'll be there, Harrison replied. As Peterson left, Harrison's gaze returned to the track, but May had already disappeared from view. Steam filled the women's shower facility as Lieutenant Mei Lin stepped under the hot spray. Her muscles ached from the morning run and yesterday's grueling obstacle course. She kept her head down, letting the water sluice away sweat and fatigue, preparing herself mentally for another day of scrutiny and doubt. The moment she'd entered, the whispers had begun. 3 women near the far end of the shower stopped their conversation and stared at her with barely concealed contempt. May had grown accustomed to the looks, the whispered comments, and the cold shoulders. At 5'4" with a slight build, she didn't fit the image most people had of a Navy SEAL candidate. Look who decided to show up, muttered Alexandra Coleman, a tall blonde woman who had made it clear from day one that she didn't think May belonged in their elite training program. I still can't believe they let someone like her into SEAL training. This isn't a charity case program. May continued washing her hair, pretending not to hear the comments. She had learned long ago that responding to every slight would only make things worse. Her strategy was simple: let her performance speak for itself. Seriously, look at her, continued Isabella Ramirez, who stood with her arms crossed, making no effort to lower her voice. She's barely bigger than my little sister. How is she supposed to carry a wounded teammate? How is she going to handle the physical demands of real combat situations? The third woman, Jordan Blake, nodded in agreement. It's not just about size, though. It's about belonging. This program has standards for a reason. When you lower those standards to be politically correct, you put everyone at risk. May turned off her shower and reached for her towel. The comments stung more than she cared to admit, but she had heard variations of them countless times throughout her military career. As one of the few women attempting to complete the Navy SEAL training program, she faced scrutiny and criticism that her male counterparts never experienced. "Hey, Lynn," Coleman called out, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Maybe you should consider transferring to a different program, something more suited to your abilities. I hear the Navy needs more administrative assistance." This comment drew snickers from the other two women. May wrapped her towel around herself and finally looked up, meeting Coleman's eyes directly. For a moment, the shower area fell silent, except for the sound of running water. "I appreciate your concern," May said calmly, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her, "but I'm exactly where I need to be." Coleman rolled her eyes. "Right. Tell me what makes you think you can handle missions that have broken men twice your size? What makes you think you deserve to be here?" May considered her words carefully. She could have mentioned her previous military experience, her specialized training, or the classified operations she had already completed. Instead, she simply said, "I guess we'll find out during training, won't we?" "Training is one thing," Ramirez interjected, "but real combat is completely different. When bullets start flying and lives are on the line, do you really think your teammates are going to trust someone who looks like she should be teaching kindergarten?" The insults continued to flow, each one designed to chip away at May's confidence and resolve. The three women seemed to feed off each other's energy, their comments becoming increasingly harsh and personal. "I bet she's only here because of some diversity quota," Blake said with a laugh. "The Navy probably needed to check a box for female representation, so they grabbed the first woman who could do a few push-ups." May finished drying off and began getting dressed. She moved with deliberate calm, refusing to let their words rush her or show any sign of the frustration building inside her. "You know what the worst part is?" Coleman continued, warming to her theme. "When she washes out, and she will wash out, she'll probably blame it on discrimination or sexism. She'll never admit that she simply wasn't good enough." The locker room had grown crowded now, with more women entering and leaving as the day shift ended. Some glanced curiously at the confrontation, while others pointedly ignored it. May noticed that none of them spoke up in her defense, though she hadn't expected them to. In this environment, keeping your head down and staying out of trouble was often the safest strategy. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking," Ramirez added, raising her voice slightly to ensure her words carried to the other women in the area. "We all know she doesn't belong here. It's nothing personal. It's just reality." May laced up her boots and stood to face the three women. She was indeed smaller than all of them and younger looking, despite being 28 years old. Her Asian features and quiet demeanor had led many people throughout her life to underestimate her capabilities. "You seem to know a lot about what everyone else is thinking," May said, slinging her gym bag over her shoulder. "But maybe you should focus more on your own performance instead of worrying about mine." Coleman stepped closer, invading May's personal space. "My performance, I've been at the top of every training exercise since we started. I've never failed a physical test or missed a target on the shooting range. Can you say the same?" May looked up at the taller woman without flinching. "I can say that I'm still here just like you are. That should tell you something." "It tells me that the instructors are going easy on you," Coleman replied. "But that won't last forever. Eventually, they'll have to hold you to the same standards as everyone else. And when that happens, you'll be gone." The tension in the shower area was palpable now. Other women had stopped their conversations to watch the confrontation unfold. May could feel dozens of eyes on her, waiting to see how she would respond to the increasingly aggressive challenges. Instead of escalating the situation further, May simply nodded and said, "I guess we'll see." She turned and walked toward the exit, leaving the three women standing in the steamy shower area, their voices following her as she left. "That's right. Walk away," Coleman called after her, "just like you'll walk away from this program when it gets too hard." May stepped into the hallway and took a deep breath. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests, and undoubtedly more confrontations with her fellow trainees. But she had faced worse situations before, and she knew she would face them again. What her critics didn't know, what none of them suspected, was that Lieutenant Mei Lin had secrets that would change everything they thought they knew about her. Colonel Harrison sat alone in his secure office, the room swept daily for electronic surveillance. The walls were lined with acoustic dampening materials, and a signal jammer hummed quietly in the corner. He reviewed Lieutenant Lin's file for the third time that week, his eyes lingering on the sections marked with the highest security classifications. The official record showed Mei Lin as a Naval Academy graduate with solid but unremarkable scores. Her service history included stints on 2 destroyers and a brief tour as a junior intelligence officer. Nothing in her public file suggested exceptional abilities or specialized training. Nothing indicated why she would attempt the grueling SEAL qualification course that broke 80% of the men who tried it. But Harrison had access to the unredacted file. He flipped to the sections marked TS/SCI, Top Secret Sensitive Compartmented Information. The real Mei Lin had graduated top of her class at Annapolis. She spoke fluent Russian, Arabic, and Farsi. She had completed advanced combat training at Quantico that wasn't offered to regular officers. And the gaps in her service record, those supposed routine deployments on destroyers, actually covered classified operations in 7 countries. A knock at the door interrupted his reading. Harrison quickly closed the file and pressed his thumb against the biometric scanner on his desk. The sensitive documents disappeared into a hidden compartment. "Enter," he called. Lieutenant Mei Lin stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. Her posture was perfect, her expression neutral. Not for the first time, Harrison marveled at her self-control. The verbal abuse she endured daily would have broken lesser officers. "Reporting as ordered, sir," she said crisply. "At ease, Lieutenant," Harrison replied, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "We're alone. Secure room." May's posture relaxed slightly, but the wariness never left her eyes. 8 years of covert operations had taught her that nowhere was truly secure. "How are you holding up?" Harrison asked, his tone softer than the gruff voice he used with other personnel. "I'm managing, sir," May replied. "The physical aspects are within parameters. The social dynamics are as expected." Harrison nodded. "I overheard Coleman and her friends in the mess hall yesterday. Their comments were out of line." A ghost of a smile touched May's lips. "Nothing I haven't heard before, sir, and nothing that affects the mission." "With the mission?" Harrison echoed, his expression growing serious. "We've had a development. Intel suggests our leak is preparing to transmit information about Operation Neptune's Trident to Viper Syndicate contacts." May leaned forward slightly, her fatigue forgotten. "The South China Sea exercise, that's highly classified strategic information." "Precisely. If Viper gets their hands on our tactical playbook for Neptune's Trident, they could sell it to hostile nations or terrorist cells. The implications would be severe." "Do we have any new leads on the identity of the leak?" May asked. Harrison shook his head. "Nothing concrete. That's why your cover needs to remain intact. You've been here 3 months without results. Pressure from above is mounting." 3 months isn't long for a counterintelligence operation of this complexity," May observed. "Whoever is leaking the SEAL tactical information is careful, professional." "Which narrows the field considerably," Harrison said. "Most of the people with access to that level of classified information are career military with spotless records." He paused, then added quietly, "Like Mike Peterson." May's expression didn't change, but Harrison noticed the slight narrowing of her eyes. "Peterson has been vocal about his opposition to my presence here. That could be genuine prejudice, or an excellent cover." "Trust no one, Lieutenant, not even me." Harrison reached into his desk and withdrew a small data drive. "This contains the real specifications for Neptune's Trident, along with altered information we're using as bait. Memorize the differences. If our leak transmits the altered information, we'll know we've got the right target." May took the drive and slipped it into her pocket. "Yes, sir. And the exercise tomorrow. Proceed as planned. Maintain your cover. Remember, you're supposed to be competent but not exceptional. Don't draw undue attention." May nodded. "Understood, sir." Though maintaining the appearance of barely adequate performance is sometimes more challenging than excellence. Harrison allowed himself a small smile. The burden of the gifted. I've seen your real qualification scores, Lieutenant. Highest marksmanship rating in SEAL history doesn't come from barely adequate. Thank you, sir. May said, her expression remaining neutral despite the rare compliment. One more thing, Harrison added, his tone turning grave. The Yemen incident 6 months ago. 4 SEALs lost because someone leaked their insertion point in timeline. I'm familiar with the case, sir. One of those men was Commander David Wilson. We served together in Iraq. He was godfather to my grandson. Harrison's voice grew tight. This isn't just about national security anymore, Lieutenant. It's personal. Whoever betrayed those men betrayed everything we stand for. May met his gaze steadily. We'll find them, sir. See that you do. Harrison nodded toward the door. Dismissed, Lieutenant, and watch your back. As May left the office, Harrison turned to the window. The training grounds below were now filled with recruits running drills, their instructors barking orders. Somewhere among them was a traitor, someone who had violated the sacred trust of the Brotherhood, someone who had blood on their hands. The old eagle's eyes narrowed. In Vietnam, they had a name for men who betrayed their units, dead men walking. They just didn't know it yet. Listen up. Chief Peterson's voice cut through the morning air like a knife. Today's exercise will test your ability to work as a team under extreme pressure. You'll be divided into squads of 6, and each squad will complete a series of obstacles while carrying a wounded teammate. Lieutenant May Lin stood at attention with the other trainees, her expression focused as Peterson explained the rules. One member of each team would play the role of an injured soldier who couldn't walk. The other 5 would have to carry that person through a complex obstacle course that included rope climbing, wall scaling, underwater swimming, and precision shooting. The team with the best overall time would receive weekend leave privileges. Squad assignments are posted on the board, Peterson announced. Memorize your teammates' names because their lives depend on you, and yours depend on them. May walked over to check the assignments, her heart sinking as she read the names. She had been placed on a team with Alexandra Coleman, Isabella Ramirez, and Jordan Blake, the same 3 women who had confronted her in the showers. The other 2 members were women she barely knew, Olivia Park and Rachel Thompson, both of whom had remained neutral in previous conflicts. Coleman saw the assignments at the same time and rolled her eyes dramatically. Great, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Looks like we got stuck with the weak link. Don't worry, Ramirez added with a smirk. When she slows us down, we'll just leave her behind. That's what would happen in real combat anyway. Thompson, a quiet woman from Tennessee, looked uncomfortable with the hostile comments, but said nothing. Park, meanwhile, seemed more interested in studying the obstacle course than engaging in the drama. Peterson blew his whistle and the teams moved to their starting positions. May noticed that their team had drawn the most challenging version of the course, which included an additional underwater component and longer carrying distances. All right, listen up, Coleman said, automatically assuming leadership of the group. Ramirez, you'll be our injured soldier since you're the lightest. Park and Thompson, you take the front positions for carrying. Blake and I will handle the middle. Lin Hao, she paused dramatically. You can bring up the rear and try not to get in our way. May remained silent, but Olivia Park spoke up. Shouldn't we discuss strategy? This course looks really difficult and we need everyone working together. Blake shook her head. The strategy is simple. The 5 of us do the work, and Lynn tries to keep up. If she can't handle it, she should drop out now and save us all the embarrassment. As they prepared for the exercise, May watched the other teams organizing their approaches. She noticed details that her teammates missed: the best handholds on the climbing wall, the optimal angle for rope ascent, and the most efficient carrying positions for the underwater section. Years of specialized training had taught her to assess tactical situations quickly and thoroughly. When Peterson's whistle signaled the start, Coleman's team began confidently. They easily handled the first obstacle, carrying Ramirez over a series of wooden barriers. Their confidence grew as they maintained a strong pace through the rope climbing section. But their first major challenge came at the wall scaling obstacle. The wooden wall stood 12 feet high and required the team to boost their injured teammate to the top while climbing up themselves. Coleman had positioned herself as the primary lifter, but she struggled with Ramirez's weight as they attempted the climb. Come on, Coleman, Blake shouted. You're supposed to be stronger than this. Coleman's face reddened with effort and embarrassment. She's heavier than she looks, she grunted, nearly dropping Ramirez as her grip slipped. Without being asked, May moved into position and helped stabilize Ramirez from below. Her assistance allowed Coleman to regain her grip and complete the lift. Instead of thanking her, Coleman shot May an irritated look as if accepting help from her was somehow insulting. The underwater obstacle proved even more challenging. The team had to carry Ramirez through a submerged tunnel that extended 50 feet beneath the surface. Each member needed to hold their breath while maintaining their grip on their teammate and navigating through the dark, cold water. Coleman led the underwater section, but halfway through her lungs began burning and her movements became erratic. Ramirez, playing the injured soldier, couldn't help but notice that Coleman's grip was loosening. Panic began to set in as water entered Ramirez's nose and mouth. Without hesitation, May swam forward and took over Coleman's position, securing Ramirez with a grip that felt surprisingly strong and confident. Her movements underwater were smooth and controlled, unlike the frantic struggling of her teammates. She guided the group through the remainder of the tunnel with a precision that surprised everyone. When they emerged on the other side, gasping and coughing, Coleman was furious. "I had it under control," she insisted, though her teammates had all felt her grip failing. "You were drowning our teammate," Park said bluntly. "Lynn saved the exercise." The final obstacle was a precision shooting challenge while carrying Ramirez up a steep incline. Each team member had to hit 5 targets at various distances while supporting their injured teammates' weight. Coleman went first and missed 3 of her 5 shots, clearly rattled by her earlier struggles. Ramirez and Blake performed better, but still missed several targets each. Park hit 4 out of 5, drawing approving nods from the observing instructors. Thompson managed 3 hits, which was respectable given the difficult conditions. When it was May's turn, she accepted the rifle with calm confidence. Despite the physical exhaustion from carrying Ramirez and the challenging terrain, her stance was steady and professional. She took aim at the first target, a small circle 300 meters away. The shot rang out and the target fell immediately. The second shot followed quickly, then the third. Each bullet found its mark with mechanical precision. By the time she fired her 5th shot, achieving a perfect score, the other teams had stopped their own exercises to watch. Even Colonel Harrison, observing from a distance, leaned forward with increased interest. "Lucky shots," Coleman muttered, but her voice lacked conviction. Chief Peterson approached their team as they completed the final obstacle. His expression was unreadable, which made May nervous. Throughout the exercise, she had tried to help her team succeed while avoiding any actions that might seem like showing off. "Interesting performance," Peterson said, looking directly at May. "Someone on this team has clearly had advanced training. Professional training." Coleman straightened up, assuming the comment was directed at her. "Thank you, Chief. I've been working really hard to improve my skills." Peterson's eyes never left May's face. "I wasn't talking to you, Coleman." He stepped closer to May, studying her with the intensity of someone trying to solve a puzzle. "What's your background, Lynn?" Before this training program, May felt her teammates' eyes boring into her. This was the moment she had been dreading, when her carefully maintained cover story might begin to unravel. She had worked so hard to blend in to appear like just another trainee working her way through the program. "Standard military training, Chief," she replied carefully. "Nothing special." Peterson nodded slowly, but his expression suggested he didn't entirely believe her answer. "Standard training doesn't produce shooting like that under pressure. Standard training doesn't teach underwater navigation techniques that advanced." The other women on her team exchanged confused glances. They had expected May to struggle with the physical challenges, not excel at them. The contradiction between their assumptions and what they had just witnessed was creating uncomfortable questions. From his observation position, Harrison watched the exchange with growing concern. Peterson was too good an instructor not to notice the discrepancy in May's performance. The cover story was beginning to fray at the edges, and in his experience, once a thread started to unravel, the entire operation could quickly come apart. Harrison made a decision and began walking toward the group. As he approached Peterson, and the trainees snapped to attention. "At ease," Harrison said, his authoritative presence immediately changing the dynamic. "Chief Peterson, a word." As Peterson stepped aside with Harrison, Coleman leaned closer to May. "What was that?" she whispered harshly. "Those shots were professional level. Military Olympics level." May maintained her neutral expression. "I got lucky." "Bullshit," Blake interjected. "Nobody gets lucky 5 times in a row at those distances. Who are you really?" Before May could respond, Harrison returned with Peterson, whose expression had shifted from suspicion to reluctant acceptance. Lieutenant Lin is part of a special training evaluation program, Harrison announced to the group. Her background and qualifications are classified at my level. That's all you need to know. Peterson's jaw tightened, but he nodded. You heard the no, back to training all of you. Lin, you're with me and Colonel Harrison. As May followed the two senior officers away from the obstacle course, she could feel the stares of Coleman Ramirez and Blake burning into her back. Her cover story had just become considerably more complicated, and in her experience, complications in covert operations usually led to danger. Harrison led them to a secluded area near the command building, well out of earshot of the other trainees. That was sloppy, Lieutenant, he said quietly. You were supposed to maintain a low profile. With respect, sir, I couldn't let Ramirez drown, May replied. And the shooting portion, I tried to miss one, but the muscle memory took over. Peterson looked between them, confusion evident on his face. Would someone please tell me what the hell is going on? Who is she really? Harrison sighed. Mike, what I'm about to tell you is classified TSSCI. If you repeat it, you'll spend the rest of your life in Leavenworth. Understood? Peterson nodded slowly. Understood, sir. Harrison turned to May. Lieutenant Chief Peterson needs to know. He can help us. May hesitated, then nodded her assent. Harrison continued. Lieutenant Lin isn't just another trainee. She's here on a classified assignment investigating a security breach within this facility. Peterson's eyes widened. A security breach? What kind of breach? Over the past year, highly classified SEAL tactics, techniques, and procedures have been leaked to a terrorist organization called Viper Syndicate, Harrison explained. 6 months ago, 4 SEALs died in Yemen because someone leaked their insertion point. We believe the leak is coming from inside this training facility. Peterson's face darkened with anger. One of our own is selling out SEALs who... That's what Lieutenant Lin is here to find out, Harrison said. Her cover as a struggling trainee was meant to allow her to observe without drawing attention. Peterson turned to May, seeing her in a new light. And what exactly is your real qualification, Lieutenant? May met his gaze steadily, but remained silent, looking to Harrison for guidance on how much to reveal. Harrison made the decision for her. Chief Peterson, meet Lieutenant Commander Maylin, Naval Intelligence, with specialized operations background. Her marksmanship scores are, well, you saw for yourself. Peterson's jaw dropped slightly. Commander, she outranks me. That's the least of what you don't know about her, Harrison said with the ghost of a smile. But right now we have a bigger problem. Her cover is compromised, and our leak might accelerate their timeline if they suspect we're onto them. Peterson's training kicked in, personal feelings set aside in the face of a threat to his SEALs. What do you need from me, sir? Keep Lieutenant Lin's true purpose here between us, Harrison instructed. Tell the others she's part of a special evaluation program if they ask. And watch everyone. The person leaking information has access to highly classified material. That narrows the field to senior instructors, command staff, and a few others. Peterson nodded grimly. Including me. Including you, though, Harrison confirmed without apology. Trust is a luxury we can't afford right now. A sudden commotion from the direction of the command center interrupted their conversation. Alarms began blaring across the facility, and security personnel rushed toward Building C, where the classified training materials were stored. Harrison's radio crackled to life. Security breach in Building C, unauthorized access to classified documents detected. The three of them exchanged looks of alarm. Whoever was leaking information had just made their move, and the timing couldn't be worse. Go, Harrison ordered Peterson. Secure your trainees. Lieutenant Lin with me. As they raced toward the command center, May couldn't shake the feeling that their hunter had just become the hunted. The game had changed, and the stakes had just gotten much higher. The alarms wailed across the Naval Special Warfare Training Center, their urgent cries slicing through the morning air. Red warning lights flashed atop buildings, transforming the pristine military facility into a chaotic tableau of motion and sound. Lieutenant Maylin sprinted alongside Colonel Harrison toward Building C, her mind racing faster than her feet. Building C housed the most sensitive documents on the base, including the complete tactical playbook for Operation Neptune's Trident. If those documents fell into the wrong hands, American forces would be dangerously exposed during the upcoming South China Sea deployment. More importantly, if Viper Syndicate acquired those plans, they'd have a blueprint for attacking U.S. forces where they were most vulnerable. Harrison's weathered face was granite hard as they ran the lines around his eyes, deepening with each step. For him, this wasn't just about national security. It was deeply personal. The memory of Commander Wilson and the 3 other SEALs who died in Yemen still haunted him. Those men had been brothers to him, and someone on this base had betrayed them. Security personnel swarmed around Building C's entrance, weapons drawn. Major Williams, the base security chief, was barking orders into his radio, his tall frame rigid with tension. At 50, Williams was a career military man who ran the security detail with mechanical precision. "Secure the perimeter. I want every exit covered," he commanded. "Nobody leaves this facility without authorization." Harrison approached Williams, his authority evident in every step. "Status report, Major." Williams straightened at Harrison's arrival. "Sir, at approximately 09:45 hours, the biometric security on the classified materials vault was bypassed. Motion sensors detected an unauthorized presence, but by the time security responded, the intruder was gone." "What was taken, May asked, drawing a sharp look from Williams. "That's need to know, Lieutenant," Williams replied coldly. Harrison's eyes narrowed. "She needs to know, Major. Lieutenant Lynn is part of an ongoing security investigation." Williams' expression flickered with surprise before returning to professional neutrality. "Very well, sir. Preliminary assessment indicates the intruder accessed files relating to Operation Neptune's Trident, specifically the tactical insertion protocols and personnel identification data." May felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. Those were exactly the kinds of details that had been leaked before the Yemen disaster. History was repeating itself, and more SEALs would die if they didn't stop it. "Security camera footage?" Harrison asked. "Being analyzed now, sir," Williams replied. "The perpetrator knew what they were doing. They disabled most of the cameras along their route, but we caught partial footage from a backup system." "I want to see it," Harrison demanded. "Of course, sir. If you'll follow me to the security center." As they walked, May noticed Chief Peterson organizing the trainees into secure areas, his voice carrying across the grounds. Coleman, Ramirez, and Blake were watching her with open suspicion. Now their earlier disdain transformed into something more calculated. The security center was a windowless room filled with monitors displaying feeds from across the base. Technicians worked at computer stations analyzing footage and monitoring the ongoing lockdown. Williams led them to a central console where a young analyst was scrubbing through surveillance video. "This is what we have, sir," Williams said, pointing to a monitor. "Captured at 09:42, 3 minutes before the alarm." The grainy footage showed a figure in standard naval fatigues moving with purpose through a corridor. The person wore a cap pulled low, obscuring their face from the overhead camera. They moved with confidence, suggesting intimate familiarity with the facility's layout and security protocols. "Stop there," May said suddenly. "Zoom in on the hands." The analyst complied, enlarging and enhancing the image. The figure wore distinctive tactical gloves with reinforced knuckles and textured grips. "Those are Kevlar Nomex blend tactical gloves," May observed. "Special operations issue. Standard equipment isn't that advanced." Harrison nodded grimly. "Whoever this is has access to specialized gear. That narrows the field considerably." Williams studied the footage with renewed interest. "We're dealing with someone who knows our systems, knows our security protocols, and has access to restricted equipment. This is an inside job without question." "Has there been any unusual communications off base?" May asked. "Not that we've detected," Williams replied, "but we're scanning all frequencies now." Harrison turned to Williams. "I want this base locked down tight, no one in or out, and I want a full inventory of what exactly was taken." "Already underway, sir," Williams assured him. "I've implemented ThreatCon Delta protocols. This base is sealed tight." As they left the security center, Harrison pulled May aside, his voice dropping to a whisper. "This is no coincidence. The breach happened right after your cover was compromised. Someone's accelerating their timeline. Or creating a diversion, so," May suggested quietly. "The timing is suspicious. It could be an attempt to distract us from something else." Harrison considered this. "Either way, we need to move quickly. The mole knows we're looking for them now. They'll be desperate, and desperate people make mistakes. Or they become more dangerous," May countered. Harrison's eyes, which had seen decades of combat, hardened. "I'm counting on both." The afternoon sun beat down on the training facility as the base remained under lockdown. Trainees and staff were confined to designated areas, while security teams conducted thorough searches of every building. The normally bustling facility had transformed into a tense waiting beast. May found herself sequestered in the women's barracks with her fellow trainees, including Coleman, Ramirez, and Blake. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken questions and suspicion. After what had happened at the obstacle course, followed immediately by the security breach, all eyes were on May. Coleman finally broke the silence. "So, Lieutenant Lynn," she said, making air quotes with her fingers, "are you going to tell us what's really going on? Or should we just keep pretending you're a regular trainee?" May met her always steadily. "I'm not authorized to discuss my assignment." "Assignment," Ramirez jumped in. "So you admit this is some kind of operation? What are you, CIA, FBI? Some kind of spy checking up on us?" The other women in the barracks had stopped what they were doing to listen. May was acutely aware that every word she spoke now would be analyzed and dissected. Her cover story, already compromised, was hanging by a thread. "I'm a naval officer just like you," she replied carefully. "Everything else is classified." Blake scoffed. "Right. Classified. How convenient." "What I want to know," Coleman said, stepping closer to May, "is why you've been pretending to struggle through training when you're clearly more qualified than you've let on. Those shots today weren't beginner's luck. That was professional-level marksmanship." May remained silent, which only seemed to infuriate Coleman further. "We've been training together for 3 months," Coleman continued, her voice rising. "Living together, eating together, supposedly trusting each other with our lives. And the whole time you've been lying to us." "I haven't lied," May said quietly. "I've simply followed my orders." "Orders to what?" Ramirez demanded. "Spy on us. Report on our performance. Are we being evaluated for something we don't know about?" The questions were hitting uncomfortably close to the truth. May had indeed been evaluating everyone on the base, looking for signs of the security leak. But revealing that now would not only compromise the investigation further, it would potentially put her in danger if the mole was listening. Before she could formulate a response, the barracks door opened and Olivia Park entered. The quiet reserve trainee had been notably absent during the lockdown until now. Lieutenant Lynn Park said formally, "Colonel Harrison requests your presence at the command center immediately." May nodded, grateful for the interruption. As she moved toward the door, Coleman called after her. "This isn't over, Lynn. Whatever game you're playing, we're going to find out." May paused at the doorway, turning back to face the room full of suspicious faces. "This isn't a game," she said softly, "and when you find out what's really happening, you might wish you hadn't." Outside, as they walked across the compound under the watchful eyes of armed security personnel, Park spoke in a low voice without looking at May. "We need to talk privately, not at the command center." May kept her expression neutral, but her instincts went on high alert. "What's this about Park?" "Not here," Park insisted. "There's a maintenance shed behind the rifle range. It's not monitored. Meet me there in 20 minutes after you see Harrison." Before May could press for more information, Park increased her pace and walked ahead, leaving May to wonder if she'd just received help from an unexpected ally or walked into another trap. The command center was a hive of activity. Officers and analysts moved between workstations with purpose, their faces set in expressions of concentrated urgency. Colonel Harrison stood at the central tactical table reviewing facility blueprints with Major Williams and Chief Peterson. "Lieutenant Lynn reporting as ordered, sir," May announced as she approached. Harrison looked up, his expression grim. "Lieutenant, we've completed the inventory of the classified materials vault. The breach is worse than we initially thought." "How much worse?" May asked. Williams pointed to a digital display showing a list of compromised files. The intruder accessed not only Neptune's Trident tactical plans, but also the personnel files of every SEAL team assigned to the operation. Names, photographs, service records, family information. The implications were chilling. With that information, Viper Syndicate could target not only the operational teams, but potentially their families as well. The breach had just become personal for dozens of servicemen and women. "There's more," Peterson added. "The technical specifications for the new underwater breathing apparatus being deployed were also accessed. That technology is still classified." Harrison's face was a mask of controlled fury. Whoever did this knew exactly what to look for. They went straight for the most damaging information. "Have we detected any unauthorized communications off base?" May asked. Williams shook his head. Nothing yet, but we're monitoring all frequencies and digital channels. If they try to transmit, we'll catch it. Unless you're using methods that we aren't monitoring, May pointed out. Steganography burst transmissions, physical dead drops. Harrison nodded. Lieutenant Lynn is right. We need to expand our surveillance parameters. He turned to Williams. Major implement monitoring protocol Echo 7. I want every communication on this base, no matter how innocuous, flagged and reviewed. Yes, sir, Williams replied, though his expression suggested he wasn't pleased with taking orders about his security protocols. Harrison turned to May. Lieutenant, I need you to review the personnel files of everyone with access to Building C. Your unique perspective might spot something we've missed. May understood the subtext. As a covert operative trained in counterintelligence, she might recognize patterns or anomalies that standard military personnel would overlook. I'll get started right away, sir, she responded. As the meeting disbanded, Peterson pulled May aside. His earlier suspicions seemed to have been replaced by grudging respect. For what it's worth, Lieutenant, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I judged you based on appearance, not capability. That was my mistake. May studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Was this a genuine change of heart, or was Peterson simply adjusting his approach now that her cover was partially blown? Apology accepted, Chief, she replied neutrally. We all have our preconceptions to overcome. Peterson nodded. Just so you know, Coleman and her friends are asking a lot of questions. They're smart, determined women. They won't stop until they get answers. I'm counting on that, May said. Sometimes the best way to flush out a rat is to make it nervous. Peterson's eyebrows rose slightly at her calculated response. You think one of them might be involved? I think everyone is a suspect until proven otherwise, May replied. Even you, Chief. Peterson's mouth tightened, but he nodded. Fair enough. Trust is earned, not given. I respect that. As Peterson walked away, May checked her watch. 15 minutes until her rendezvous with Park at the maintenance shed. She had to decide whether to keep that appointment or report it to Harrison. If Park was genuinely trying to help, the information could be valuable. If it was a trap, May had survived 8 years of covert operations by trusting her instincts. And right now, those instincts were telling her that Olivia Park knew something important, something worth the risk. The maintenance shed stood isolated behind the rifle range, its weathered exterior blending into the landscape. Approaching cautiously, May scanned the surroundings for any sign of surveillance or ambush. The area appeared deserted, with most personnel still confined to their designated security zones during the lockdown. May opened the door slowly, one hand ready to reach for the concealed knife she always carried. Regulations be damned. In Huz, the small space was dim, filled with maintenance equipment and the smell of oil and gunpowder. Olivia Park stood by a workbench, her posture alert but not threatening. Close the door, Park said quietly. We don't have much time. May complied but positioned herself with a clear path to the exit. What's this about, Park? First, let me be clear about who I am, Park said, reaching into her pocket. May tensed, but Park slowly withdrew a credentials wallet and flipped it open. Olivia, Park Defense Intelligence Agency. I'm conducting a parallel investigation into the security leaks. May examined the credentials carefully. They appeared genuine, but in her line of work, appearances were often deceiving. DIA, why wasn't I briefed on your presence? Compartmentalization, Park replied. After the Yemen incident, Navy intelligence and DIA launched separate investigations. Neither was to know about the other to prevent potential compromise. But given today's developments, I think we need to pool resources. Prove you are who you say you are, May demanded. Tell me something only DIA would know. Park nodded, accepting the challenge. 3 months ago, Viper Syndicate transferred $2.7 million through a shell company in Singapore called Azure Pacific Holdings. The money originated from accounts linked to state-sponsored terrorism. DIA has been tracking these financial movements as part of Operation Broken Arrow. The details aligned with intelligence May had received in her briefings. Few people outside top-level intelligence circles would have access to that information. All right, May conceded. Let's say you're D. What have you discovered? I've been following the money, Park explained, pulling out a tablet and displaying a series of financial records. Several individuals on this base have received substantial deposits to offshore accounts over the past year. Most were careful, but money always leaves a trail. May examined the records with interest. Have you identified the source? Not definitively, but the routing patterns match known Viper Syndicate financial structures. They're using a complex network of shell companies and cryptocurrency conversions, but the end recipients are here on this base. Names, May asked. Park swiped through several screens. 3 primary suspects based on financial anomalies. Lieutenant Commander Alvarez from Tactical Training, Petty Officer Chen from Communications, and she paused, her expression darkening. Major Williams from Security. May's mind raced. Williams was in charge of base security. He had access to every restricted area, every classified document, and every security protocol. If he was the mole, it would explain how the intruder had bypassed security so efficiently. Williams has been leading the investigation into the breach, May noted. The perfect position to control what is and isn't discovered. Park agreed. Classic counterintelligence tactic. We need proof, May said. Financial irregularities are suspicious, but not conclusive. Park nodded. That's why I wanted to meet privately. I need access to the communication monitoring systems. If Williams is our mole, he'll be watching for anyone trying to investigate him. Why come to me? Why not go directly to Colonel Harrison? Because I don't know who to trust, Park admitted. Harrison has been here for years. He has connections throughout the military establishment. For all I know, he could be involved as well. May considered this. Harrison had recruited her personally for this mission. She'd trusted him implicitly, but in counterintelligence, trust was a luxury that often proved fatal. What do you propose? May asked. I need access to the secure communications hub to place monitoring software that Williams won't detect. With your newly acknowledged special status, you might be able to get us in there. It was a reasonable request, but something felt off. If Park was truly DIA, why hadn't she placed her monitoring equipment months ago? Why wait until now, when the base was on high alert? I'll see what I can do, May said noncommittally, but I'll need to verify your information first. Park's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. We don't have time for bureaucratic cross-checking. The mole knows we're onto them. They'll be making their move soon. Nevertheless, I need to follow protocol, May insisted. Meet me at the communications center at 2100 hours. I'll have an answer for you then. Park seemed about to argue, but then nodded. Fine, 2100 hours. Don't be late, and don't tell anyone about our conversation. As they prepared to leave the shed, Park adding, by the way, your performance at the obstacle course today was impressive. Where did you learn to shoot like that? The question seemed casual, but May caught the probing undertone. Where did you learn financial forensics, Agent Park? Some things are part of the job. Park smiled thinly. Fair enough, 2100 hours. May left the maintenance shed with her mind churning. Was Park truly a DIA agent, or was this an elaborate ruse? And if Williams was indeed the mole, how deeply had base security been compromised? One thing was certain, the net was tightening, and someone was going to get caught in it very soon. Swear. The sun was setting over the Pacific, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and reds as May made her way to Colonel Harrison's private office. The base remained under lockdown with armed patrols visible at every junction. The atmosphere had transformed from professional military discipline to something approaching wartime vigilance. Harrison was alone when she entered, studying personnel files spread across his desk. He looked up, the lines in his face deeper than they had been that morning. The day's events had taken their toll on the veteran officer. Close the door, Lieutenant, he said wearily. What have you discovered? May secured the door and moved to stand before his desk. Sir, I had an interesting conversation with trainee Olivia Park. She claims to be DIA running a parallel investigation into the leaks. Harrison's expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. Did she now, and did you believe her? She had convincing credentials and knowledge of classified financial intelligence regarding Viper Syndicate. But something felt off. Trust your instincts, Lieutenant. They've kept you alive this long. Harrison leaned back in his chair. For the record, there is no DIA operation on this base, at least none that I've been briefed on. She specifically mentioned Major Williams as a primary suspect based on financial irregularities. May continued, she wants my help accessing the communications center tonight. Harrison's expression darkened. Williams has been with me since Iraq. I trust him with my life. With respect, sir, personal loyalty can be a blind spot in counterintelligence operations. Noted, Harrison said tersely, but accusing the head of base security is a serious matter. What evidence did Park provide? References to unusual deposits in offshore accounts. She showed me financial records that appeared legitimate, but I couldn't verify their authenticity in the field. Harrison was quiet for a moment, thinking. This could be an attempt to sow discord, divide and conquer, or it could be valuable intelligence from an unexpected source. He looked up at May. What does your gut tell you, Lieutenant? May considered the question carefully. My gut tells me Park is hiding something. Whether she's DIA or not, she has an agenda she's not fully disclosing. Then we proceed with caution, Harrison decided. Keep your appointment with Park tonight, but we'll be monitoring. If she is DIA, no harm done. If she's something else, he let the implication hang in the air. And what about Williams, sir? Should we investigate her claims? Harrison's face hardened. I've known Williams for 15 years. He bled beside me in Fallujah, but he sighed heavily. In this business, we verify everything. I'll have his finances checked discreetly. As they discussed the details of the evening's operation, the base alarm system suddenly blared to life again. Red warning lights flashed as an automated announcement echoed through the building. Attention all personnel, unauthorized communication detected. Security protocol Echo 3 initiated. This is not a drill. Harrison grabbed his secure phone immediately. Williams, report what's happening. May could hear the major's voice through the speaker. Sir, we've detected a burst transmission from somewhere in the main training complex. Encrypted frequency, very brief duration. We're triangulating the source now. Content, Harrison demanded. Working to decode it, sir. Preliminary analysis suggests it contained compressed data files, large ones. Harrison's face went pale. The stolen intel from Building C. It appears so, sir. Whoever took that data is transmitting it off base right now. Harrison looked at May, his expression grim. Find the source of that transmission, Lieutenant. Use whatever resources you need. Whoever is sending that data is our mole. Yes, sir, May replied, already moving toward the door. And Lieutenant, Harrison called after her. If you find them, take them alive. I want to know who they're working for and why they betrayed their oath. May nodded. I'll do my best, sir. But if they resist, then do what you were trained to do, Harrison finished darkly. What we both were trained to do. As May rushed from the office, the wailing alarms seemed to match the pounding of her heart. After 3 months of careful investigation, events were accelerating rapidly. The hunter had become the hunted, but roles could reverse in an instant in this deadly game of shadows. Outside, darkness had fallen completely over the base. Searchlights swept across buildings and training grounds as security teams mobilized. In the confusion and urgency of the moment, May knew the mole would be making their move, and she intended to be there when they did. The communications center was a fortress within a fortress. Located in the heart of the administrative complex, it housed the most sophisticated signals, intelligence equipment on the base. Under normal circumstances, access was strictly limited to authorized communications personnel. Under lockdown conditions, it was virtually impenetrable. Or so it should have been. May approached cautiously, noting with concern that the 2 Marines usually posted at the entrance were absent. The heavy security door stood slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling onto the darkened walkway. Something was very wrong. Drawing her sidearm, a Sig Sauer M18 that she had been issued after her cover was partially compromised, May moved silently to the entrance. Years of covert operations had taught her the value of stealth and surprise. She listened intently, hearing the faint sound of keyboard clicks from within. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open with her shoulder weapon raised. Naval security, don't move. The scene inside froze her in place for a split second. Olivia Park stood at the main communications console, a portable drive connected to the system. On the floor beside her lay the 2 Marine guards unconscious or worse, and beside Park, holding a weapon trained directly at May, stood Major Williams. Put your weapon down, Lieutenant, Williams said calmly. This doesn't have to get messy. May kept her pistol steady, assessing the situation rapidly. Williams had positioned himself partially behind Park, using her as a shield. The angle made a clean shot impossible without risking Park's life. You're the mole, May said, the pieces finally falling into place. You've been selling SEAL secrets to Viper Syndicate. Williams smiled thinly. Very good, Lieutenant. Or should I say, Commander, your cover was impressive, but not perfect. I've had my eye on you since you arrived. Why, May demanded, and keeping him talking while she looked for an opening. Why betray your country Your brothers in arms. A flash of genuine anger crossed William's face. Brothers, the military talks about brotherhood and sacrifice while sending men and women to die in pointless wars, then abandoning them when they return broken. I lost my brother in Syria to a drone strike that your precious commanders claim never happened. They classified his death, buried the truth, and expected blind loyalty in return. So you sold out SEAL teams as revenge. May's disgust was evident in her voice. You got 4 men killed in Yemen. Collateral damage, Williams replied coldly. The system only changes when it's forced to. Viper Syndicate pays well for the intelligence I provide, but money isn't the point. Exposing military hypocrisy is. But during this exchange, Park had continued working at the console, her fingers flying over the keyboard. May realized she wasn't being coerced. She was a willing participant. And you, Park, what's your excuse? You're not even DIA, are you? Park glanced up briefly. Smart girl. No, I'm not DIA. I'm what you might call a specialist. Viper hired me to infiltrate this facility 6 months ago. The financial intelligence I showed you, that was bait to divert suspicion toward Williams while I completed the real objective. Which is, May kept them talking, using the time to calculate angles and distances. Insurance, Williams answered. Right now, Agent Park is downloading the complete personnel files of every Navy SEAL past and present. Names, addresses, family information. If anything happens to us, that information goes public. Imagine what enemies of the United States would do with that data. The threat was chilling. The lives of thousands of servicemen and women along with their families hung in the balance. May realized this had escalated far beyond a simple intelligence leak. This was a potential catastrophe for the entire SEAL program. You won't make it off this base, May warned. Every exit is sealed. Every communication channel is monitored. Williams chuckled. Monitored by systems I control. And as for exits, he gestured toward a duffel bag in the corner. We have something special planned, but enough talk. Put your weapon down or I'll put you down. May's mind raced. Williams had the tactical advantage, but she had trained for precisely these kinds of high-stakes confrontations. She just needed one moment of distraction. As if on cue, her secure radio crackled. Lieutenant Lynn, report status, came Harrison's voice. Williams' eyes flickered toward the sound for just a fraction of a second. It was all May needed. She dropped to one knee, firing 2 rapid shots. The first struck Williams' shoulder, spinning him sideways. The second missed as he fell, shattering a computer monitor behind him. Park screamed and ducked beneath the console. Williams recovered quickly, returning fire as he sought cover behind a server rack. Bullets whizzed past May as she rolled behind a desk, the wood splintering as rounds tore through it. You've made a serious mistake, Commander. Williams called out, his voice tight with pain. Even if you take us down, the damage is done. The transmission is complete. May checked her magazine and steeled herself. The standoff had just begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Outside, she could hear the pounding of boots as security teams responded to the gunfire. Help was coming, but time was running out. Williams and Park were cornered, and cornered traitors were the most dangerous kind. In the tense silence between gunshots, May's training took over. She had spent years preparing for moments like this, where split-second decisions determined who lived and who died. As a SEAL commander, she had led teams through situations far worse than this. The mole had been found. Now it was time to spring the trap. Gunfire echoed through the communications center as Lieutenant May Lin kept her position behind the bullet-riddled desk. Across the room, Major Williams crouched behind a server rack, blood seeping from his shoulder wound. Olivia Park remained hidden beneath the main console, the flash drive containing thousands of SEAL identities still connected to the system. The stakes couldn't be higher. If that data escaped the base, the consequences would be catastrophic, not just for operational security, but for the lives of countless service members and their families. Years of covert operations, deployments, and sacrifice would be exposed to America's enemies. May calculated her options with cold precision. The wooden desk provided minimal cover against Williams' service weapon. The angle to Park was poor, and the risk of hitting critical communications equipment was high. Outside, she could hear security teams assembling, but they couldn't enter without risking crossfire casualties. It's over, Williams, May called out, keeping her voice steady. The building is surrounded. There's no way out. Williams laughed a harsh sound devoid of humor. You still don't understand, do you? There's always a way out for those who plan ahead, and I've been planning this for years. A sudden movement caught May's eye as Park lunged toward the duffel bag Williams had indicated earlier. Acting on instinct, May fired a warning shot that splintered to the floor inches from Park's outstretched hand. Park froze, then slowly raised her hands. Don't be stupid, Park, May warned. Whatever he's promised you isn't worth dying for. And you have no idea what this is about. Park spat back, her composed facade cracking. This isn't about money, it's about justice. Williams used the distraction to shift position, moving closer to the bag, while keeping the server rack between himself and May. She's right, Commander. This is about holding accountable a system that sacrifices its people, then buries the evidence and expects blind loyalty in return. By endangering thousands of SEALs and their families, May challenged tracking his movement while maintaining awareness of Park's position. That's not justice, that's terrorism. Williams' face hardened. Sometimes terror is the only language power understands. My brother died because of a classified operation that officially never happened. They erased him like he never existed. How many others have been erased, Commander? How many lives deemed expendable by men who never see the battlefield? The raw pain in his voice was genuine, but May recognized the dangerous fanaticism that had twisted his grief into something destructive. She had seen it before in war zones across the world, righteous anger corrupted into indiscriminate vengeance. Your brother deserved better, she acknowledged, shifting slightly to maintain her sightline. But this won't bring him justice. It will just create more victims. Spare me the recruitment poster philosophy, Williams snarled. You're part of the system. You've been complicit in the same lies, the same cover-ups. Maybe. May conceded, her mind racing. She needed to keep him talking while finding an opening. But I don't target innocent families. I don't betray the men and women who trust me with their lives. The radio at her hip crackled to life. Lieutenant Lynn, this is Colonel Harrison. Status report. Without taking her eyes off Williams, May responded. Communications center compromised. 2 hostiles, 1 wounded. Sensitive data at risk. Need immediate support, but exercise extreme caution. Roger that, Harrison replied. Hold position. Tactical team in place awaiting your signal. Williams smiled coldly. Your cavalry won't arrive in time, Commander. He made a sudden move toward Park, who had inched closer to the duffel bag during their exchange. In one fluid motion, Williams tossed something to Park, who caught it with practiced ease. May recognized the object immediately, a dead man's switch connected to what could only be an explosive device. Her blood ran cold. The duffel bag wasn't an escape plan. It was insurance. Now we negotiate, Williams announced, his confidence returning despite his wound. Here's how this works. You and your tactical team stand down. Agent Park and I leave with our data. If anyone interferes, if the signal from this switch is interrupted for any reason, the explosives in that bag detonate, enough C4 to take out this building and everyone in it. Park held the switch with a white-knuckled grip, her eyes showing the dangerous combination of fear and determination. He's not bluffing, Commander. I helped him place secondary charges throughout the facility. This isn't just about getting away. It's about sending a message. May felt the weight of command bearing down on her shoulders. This wasn't just another standoff. It was a potential massacre. The communications center was the heart of the facility, housing not only vital equipment, but also dozens of personnel in adjacent areas. A significant explosion would cause catastrophic casualties. Think about what you're doing, Williams, May said, keeping her weapon trained on him while processing this new threat. You were a decorated officer. You took an oath to protect. Don't lecture me about oaths, Williams shot back. Where was that oath when my brother's body was classified as a training accident to avoid diplomatic complications? Where was that oath when his widow was denied benefits because the operation he died in officially never happened? His rage was building, and May recognized the dangerous escalation in his voice. Angry men made mistakes, but they also became unpredictable. She needed to defuse the situation without triggering either Williams or the explosives. Your demands, she asked, shifting to tactical negotiation. Williams seemed momentarily surprised by her direct approach. Simple. A vehicle to the airfield, a fueled aircraft, and clearance to international airspace. Once we're safely away, we'll provide instructions for disarming the explosives. You know, I can't authorize that, May replied evenly. Then get someone who can, Williams countered. You have 3 minutes before we start reducing our negotiating position. Each minute after that, one hostage dies, starting with those Marines. He gestured toward the unconscious guards. May's mind raced through contingency plans, assessing and discarding options with lightning speed. This was why she had become a SEAL commander, the ability to make impossible decisions under unimaginable pressure. She touched her radio again. Colonel, we have a situation. Hostiles have explosives with a dead man switch. They're demanding extraction. Multiple lives at risk. There was a moment of tense silence before Harrison's voice came through tight with controlled urgency. Understood, Lieutenant. Keep them talking. We're working on options. May knew what that meant. Harrison was assembling a tactical response, but against a dead man's switch options were severely limited. Any aggressive action risked triggering the explosives. They needed a different approach. Your brother, May said suddenly, addressing Williams. What was his name? The question seemed to catch Williams off guard. What, your brother, the one who died in Syria? Tell me his name. A flicker of genuine emotion crossed Williams' face. Why do you care? Because if this is about justice for him, he deserves to be remembered by name, May replied quietly. Not just as a motivation for vengeance. For a moment, the hardness in Williams' eyes softened. Captain Thomas Williams, United States Marine Corps, Special Operations. He was my little brother, always trying to live up to the family legacy. May nodded respectfully. Captain Thomas Williams deserved better than a cover-up. I agree with you on that. Don't try to manipulate me, Commander, Williams warned, the momentary vulnerability vanishing. Sympathy won't change anything. I'm not offering sympathy, May replied. I'm offering understanding. There's a difference. While maintaining eye contact with Williams, May assessed Park's position and demeanor. The woman was growing increasingly nervous, her fingers white around the dead man's switch. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and her breathing had become shallow and rapid. The signs of someone reaching their psychological breaking point. How long have you been working with Viper Syndicate, Park? May asked, shifting her attention. Park blinked in surprise. Long enough to know they're the only ones willing to expose military hypocrisy. And you believe they'll use the SEAL identities for justice, not for profit, not for targeting Americans. Uncertainty flickered across Park's face before she rallied. The truth has consequences, sometimes painful ones. The truth, May repeated thoughtfully. Let's talk about truth then. The truth is Viper Syndicate isn't an accountability organization. It's a mercenary group that sells intelligence to the highest bidder. They don't care about your cause or Williams' brother. They care about profit. Shut up, Williams snapped, but May could see her words had struck a nerve with Park. You're stalling, Park accused, though doubt had crept into her voice. I'm stating facts, May countered. Check the drive you're holding. Look at what you've actually downloaded. It's not just SEAL identities, is it? It's operational details that could get people killed. Not the generals who make decisions, not the politicians who authorize missions, but ordinary men and women doing their jobs. Park hesitated, her resolve visibly wavering. May pressed her advantage. Williams has been feeding Viper information for months. Information that led directly to the deaths of 4 SEALs in Yemen. Was that justice? Were those men responsible for what happened to Captain Thomas Williams? Don't listen to her, Williams barked at Park. She's trying to divide us. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Park's eyes darted to the computer screen, then back to Williams. You said no one would die. You said this was about exposing the system, not targeting individuals. Sometimes casualties are unavoidable, Williams replied coldly. The greater cause demands sacrifice. It was the wrong thing to say. May saw the shift in Park's expression, the dawning realization that she had aligned herself with someone whose moral compass had been irrevocably damaged by grief and rage. How many sacrifices, Williams, May asked quietly. How many lives are acceptable collateral damage for your vendetta? 4 SEALs in Yemen, the dozens of personnel in this building, the families of every service member whose identity you're exposing. Williams' face contorted with fury. Enough, our time is up. Make the call for our extraction or the first Marine dies. He raised his weapon toward one of the unconscious guards, but his movement was unsteady, his wounded shoulder clearly affecting his aim. It was the opening May had been waiting for. In one fluid motion honed through thousands of hours of training, May vaulted over the desk, closing the distance to Williams in a heartbeat. Her first strike targeted his wounded shoulder, causing him to howl in pain and drop his weapon. The second was a precision blow to his solar plexus that drove the air from his lungs. Williams staggered backward, gasping, but still managed to lash out with surprising strength. His fist connected with May's ribs, a solid impact that would have incapacitated a lesser fighter. But May had endured far worse in her years of combat. She absorbed the blow and countered with a sweeping leg technique that took Williams' feet from under him. As he fell, she followed him down, pinning his wounded arm and applying precise pressure to neutralize without killing. Park, detonate now. Williams gasped through the pain. May froze, acutely aware that Park still held the dead man's switch. One release of pressure, and the building would become a fiery tomb for everyone inside. But Park stood motionless, the switch clutched in her trembling hand, indecision written across her face. He lied to you, Park, May said softly, maintaining her hold on Williams. This isn't about justice anymore. It's about revenge, and you know it. Park's eyes filled with tears. I thought we were exposing corruption. I didn't sign up for murder. Then don't become a murderer, May urged. There are ways to seek accountability without bloodshed, ways that honor the dead without creating more victims. The tension in the room was unbearable as Park stood at the crossroads of an irrevocable decision. Outside tactical teams held their positions, aware that the slightest misstep could trigger disaster. After what seemed an eternity, Park exhaled shakily. How do I step back from this? First, tell me how the switch works. May said, her voice calm and reassuring despite the life or death stakes. So we can make sure no one gets hurt. Constant pressure. Park explained, her voice barely above a whisper. If I release it completely, the circuit closes and triggers the detonator. Okay, well, May nodded, thinking rapidly. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to sit down very slowly. Place your hand with the switch flat on the floor, maintaining pressure. Can you do that? Park nodded, moving with deliberate care to follow May's instructions. Once seated, she placed her hand on the floor, the switch pressed firmly beneath her palm. Good, May encouraged. Now I'm going to call in our EOD specialist. He'll help secure the switch so you can let go safely. Just keep breathing and stay calm. Beneath her, Williams had gone still, his resistance fading as blood loss and pain took their toll. You're making a mistake, Park, he muttered. They'll bury this too. Nothing will change. May applied additional pressure to silence him, then spoke into her radio. Colonel, we need EOD immediately. One hostile subdued, one cooperating. Dead man's switch active but stable. Roger that, Harrison replied. EOD team entering now. Well done, Lieutenant. The door to the communications center opened slowly, and a team in specialized bomb disposal gear entered with practiced caution. Their leader, Master Chief Ortiz, approached Park with remarkable composure given the circumstances. Ma'am, I'm going to place a mechanical clamp on that switch, he explained calmly. It will maintain the exact pressure you're applying now, allowing you to release your hand without triggering the device. I need you to stay perfectly still while I work. Can you do that? Park nodded, her face pale but determined. Yes. With steady hands that belied the pressure of the moment, Ortiz carefully positioned a specialized clamp around the switch in Park's hand. Millimeter by millimeter, he adjusted the tension until it precisely matched the pressure Park was applying. On 3, I want you to slowly slide your fingers out one at a time, Ortiz instructed. The clamp will take over. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Park closed her eyes and carefully withdrew her fingers from beneath the clamp. When the last digit was free, she exhaled a shuddering breath. The switch remained secure, held in the deactivated position by Ortiz's device. Device secured, Ortiz announced into his radio, proceeding with bomb disposal protocols. As additional EOD personnel moved to the duffel bag and began the painstaking process of assessing and disarming the explosives, security teams entered the communications center. They took Williams into custody, applying emergency medical treatment to his shoulder wound while securing him with heavy restraints. Park offered no resistance as she was handcuffed and led away. her earlier defiance replaced by a hollow-eyed stare that May recognized all too well the look of someone whose certainties had crumbled beneath him. Colonel Harrison entered once the situation was declared secure, his weathered face showing the strain of the past hours. His eyes met May's across the room and a silent acknowledgement passed between them. The crisis had been averted, but the damage ran deep. Lieutenant, Harrison said formally, though the pride in his voice was unmistakable. Excellent work. May straightened, suddenly aware of the aching in her ribs where Williams had struck her. Thank you, sir. The drive with the stolen data is still connected to the main console. We should secure it immediately. Harrison nodded to a cybersecurity specialist who carefully removed the drive and placed it in an evidence bag. We'll need to assess exactly what was compromised and implement countermeasures. Sir, May said quietly, stepping closer to Harrison. Williams mentioned secondary explosives placed throughout the facility. We should continue the lockdown until they were all located and neutralized. Already underway, Harrison assured her. Ortiz's team is conducting a comprehensive sweep. Preliminary reports suggest Park was exaggerating about the extent of the explosives, but we're taking no chances. As the immediate danger subsided, the full impact of what had transpired began to settle on May's shoulders. The betrayal ran deeper than she had imagined. Williams had been respected, trusted with the safety of the entire facility. His position had given him unprecedented access to classified information and security protocols. I should have identified him sooner. May said, the weight of responsibility evident in her voice. Harrison shook his head. Don't go down that road, Lieutenant. Williams was careful, methodical. He used his position to cover his tracks and deflect suspicion. The important thing is you stopped him before the worst could happen. May nodded, though the professional in her would analyze this operation for months to come, identifying what she could have done differently, how she might have uncovered the truth earlier. What happens now, sir? She asked. Now, Harrison sighed, we begin the long process of damage control, assessing what information was compromised, implementing security protocols for potentially exposed personnel, and thoroughly investigating how deep this conspiracy runs. In Park, Williams, May asked. Military justice will take its course, Harrison replied grimly. Treason during wartime carries the harshest penalties our system allows. But first we'll extract every piece of intelligence they possess about Viper Syndicate and their contacts. A medical team had arrived and insisted on examining May, despite her protests that she was fine. As a medic checked her for signs of concussion and bandaged the cuts she hadn't even noticed receiving during the confrontation, May's thoughts turned to the women who had spent months mocking and undermining her. Sir, what about Coleman and the others? She asked Harrison, who had remained nearby. They've witnessed enough to piece together parts of this operation. Harrison considered this. They're bound by the same security protocols as everyone else on this base. But you're right, they deserve some explanation after what they've been through. He paused, studying her thoughtfully. Perhaps it's time to drop the pretense entirely, Commander Lin. The use of her actual rank wasn't lost on May. After months of operating under a partial cover, the suggestion of stepping fully into her true identity felt both liberating and exposing. Are you sure that's wise, sir? She asked. Harrison's expression softened slightly. Sometimes the truth carefully managed is the best solution. Besides, he added with the ghost of a smile, I think they have earned the right to know exactly who they've been underestimating all this time. Dawn broke over the San Diego coastline, painting the sky in gentle pinks and golds that belied the night of tension and danger. The Naval Special Warfare Training Center remained under lockdown, though the urgent crisis had passed. EOD teams had located and neutralized 3 additional explosive devices hidden throughout the facility, fewer than Park had claimed, but enough to have caused significant casualties if detonated. Lieutenant May Lin stood on the observation deck overlooking the training grounds, watching the sunrise with tired eyes. She hadn't slept, spending the night assisting with the investigation and security protocols. Her body ached from the confrontation with Williams, but she ignored the discomfort as she had been trained to do. The door behind her opened, and Colonel Harrison emerged carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. He handed one to May without a word, then joined her at the railing. The interrogations have begun, he said, after a moment of companionable silence. Williams isn't talking yet, but Park has been more cooperative. She's providing details on Viper Syndicate's structure and operations in exchange for consideration during sentencing. May nodded, sipping the strong black coffee gratefully. Do we know how much information was actually transmitted before we intervened? Partial data on Operation Neptune's Trident made it through, Harrison admitted. But our cybersecurity team managed to corrupt key tactical details during transmission. The information Viper received is incomplete and in some cases deliberately misleading. We're modifying the operation accordingly. In the SEAL identities, May asked, the concern evident in her voice. Never left the building, Harrison assured her. The transmission was interrupted before that data package could be sent. Our people are safe. Relief washed over May. The primary objective of her mission had been achieved. The leak had been identified and contained before catastrophic damage could occur. I've spoken with Naval Intelligence Command, Harrison continued. Your undercover assignment here is officially concluded. You're to report to Norfolk next week to resume command of SEAL Team 7. They've been without their commanding officer for too long. A complex mixture of emotions swept through May at this news. For 3 months, she had lived a carefully constructed fiction, hiding her abilities and experience. The prospect of returning to her team, to her real identity, filled her with a sense of homecoming. There's something else, Harrison added, his tone shifting slightly. Coleman, Ramirez, and Blake have requested to speak with you before you leave. May raised an eyebrow in surprise. I imagine they have questions. More than a few, Harrison agreed with a dry chuckle. I've authorized a limited disclosure of your actual rank and position. The details of the investigation remain classified, but they know you're a SEAL commander who was here on a security operation. How did they take that revelation? May asked, genuinely curious. Harrison's weathered face cracked into a rare full smile. About like you'd expect. Coleman looked like she'd swallowed her tongue. Ramirez kept opening and closing her mouth without making a sound. Blake just sat there, turning progressively paler. Despite her exhaustion, May couldn't help but smile at the image. After months of enduring their condescension and mockery, there was a certain poetic justice in their discovery of her true identity. When should I meet with them? She asked. They're waiting in the briefing room whenever you're ready, Harrison replied. No rush, they're not going anywhere. May nodded, finishing her coffee and gathering her thoughts. This final conversation represented the closing of a chapter, a transition back to her true self after months of playing a role. Thank you, sir, she said sincerely, turning to face the older officer, for your trust and support throughout this operation. Harrison nodded, his eyes reflecting the understanding that could only come from shared experience. You've done your country a great service, Commander, and you've reminded an old warhorse like me that appearance rarely equals capability. He extended his hand. It's been an honor serving with you. May shook his hand firmly. Likewise, Colonel. I couldn't have asked for a better commanding officer for this mission. As Harrison departed, May took a moment to prepare herself for the conversation ahead. Then, straightening her uniform and squaring her shoulders, she made her way to the briefing room where her former tormentors awaited. The briefing room fell silent as May entered. Alexandra Coleman, Isabella Ramirez, and Jordan Blake sat at the conference table, their expressions a mixture of embarrassment, awe, and uncertainty. They rose automatically at her entrance, a sign of respect that would have been unthinkable just 24 hours earlier. Please sit, May said, closing the door behind her. The three women resumed their seats, exchanging nervous glances. Coleman, always the most outspoken, cleared her throat. Commander Lynn, she began awkwardly. Colonel Harrison has informed us about your actual rank and position. I want to apologize for our behavior over the past 3 months. May regarded them calmly, noting the genuine contrition in Coleman's usually confident demeanor. Apology accepted, Lieutenant Coleman. We had no idea, Ramirez added, her voice smaller than May had ever heard it. All this time we thought you were weak, incompetent, a diversity quota. May supplied, her tone neutral rather than accusatory. The three women winced collectively. Yes, Blake admitted, having the courage to meet May's eyes directly. We judged you by your appearance, not your abilities. We were wrong. May studied them thoughtfully. Their remorse seemed genuine, but more important was the lesson they had learned. In the world of special operations, appearances were often deceiving, and underestimating an opponent or an ally based on superficial characteristics could be a fatal mistake. In our line of work, May said finally, preconceptions can get you killed. The enemy doesn't always look like the enemy. An ally doesn't always match your expectations of what strength looks like. Coleman nodded soberly. We understand that now. What you did last night, taking down Williams and Park, saving the base, it was incredible. It was my job, May corrected gently. The same job all of us signed up for to protect our country and our fellow service members regardless of the cost. Commander Ramirez ventured hesitantly. If you don't mind us asking, how long have you been a SEAL? We didn't even know women had completed the training. A small smile touched May's lips. 8 years. I was part of a classified integration program before the official gender restrictions were lifted. My first deployment was to Somalia in 2017. Since then, I've led operations in Yemen, Syria, and several other locations I'm not at liberty to discuss. The three women absorbed this information with expressions of astonishment. The revelation that they had been training alongside and mocking a combat-hardened SEAL commander with multiple deployments was clearly difficult to process. And all those times during training when you seemed to struggle, Blake began, were part of my cover, May confirmed. My mission required me to blend in to appear average. Drawing attention through exceptional performance would have compromised the operation. But yesterday at the obstacle course, Coleman said, realization dawning, when you took those shots. A calculated risk, May acknowledged. The situation with Ramirez underwater forced my hand. I couldn't maintain my cover at the expense of a teammate's safety. The room fell silent as the three women contemplated the implications. For months they had believed themselves superior to May, only to discover she had been operating at a fraction of her true capability. What happens now? Blake asked finally. For me, I return to my team, May replied. For you, training continues. You're all capable officers with the potential to excel if you can overcome your tendency to judge books by their covers. Coleman leaned forward, her expression earnest. Commander Lin, I know we have no right to ask anything of you after how we treated you, but would you be willing to share some of your insights before you leave? Your experience could be invaluable to us. The request surprised May. It represented a significant shift in attitude from the arrogant dismissal she had endured for months. More importantly, it suggested that the lesson had truly been learned. I can arrange that, she agreed. We have a few days before I depart for Norfolk. Relief and gratitude washed over the three women's faces. What had begun as an apology meeting had transformed into an opportunity for growth and mentorship, an unexpected but welcome outcome. As they concluded their conversation, Blake asked one final question that had clearly been weighing on her mind. Commander, how did you do it? How did you endure months of our behavior without retaliating or revealing yourself? May considered the question thoughtfully. In special operations, we're trained to endure much worse than a few cutting remarks or cold shoulders. Physical discomfort, sleep deprivation, psychological pressure. These are constants in our world. But more importantly, she added, I never lost sight of the mission. Personal feelings couldn't be allowed to interfere with the larger objective. Protecting the SEALs. Ramirez nodded in understanding. Protecting everyone who serves, May corrected. Williams's betrayal endangered not just SEALs but the entire military community. Some missions are bigger than personal comfort or pride. As the meeting concluded, the three women stood and saluted May with newfound respect, not just for her rank but for the character and capability she embodied. It was a far cry from their first encounters in the shower room months ago. 3 days later, May stood on the tarmac beside a Navy UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, her duffel bag at her feet. She was dressed in her full-service uniform, now the gold oak leaf of a lieutenant commander gleaming on her collar, the SEAL trident prominently displayed on her chest. After months of hiding her true identity, the return to her proper uniform and insignia felt like reclaiming a part of herself. Colonel Harrison approached accompanied by Chief Peterson, whose attitude toward May had undergone a remarkable transformation since the revelation of her true identity and the events in the communications center. Your team is eager for your return, Commander, Harrison said, extending his hand. They've been kept in the dark about your assignment here, but they'll be glad to have you back. May shook his hand firmly. Thank you, sir. I'm looking forward to rejoining them. Peterson stepped forward, somewhat awkwardly. Commander Lin, I owe you an apology. I made assumptions based on appearance rather than ability. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't, Chief, May replied, though her tone held no malice. The next female trainee who comes through might not be a SEAL commander, but she deserves the same opportunity to prove herself on merit, not preconceptions. Peterson nodded solemnly. Yes, ma'am. Lesson learned. To May's surprise, a small group had gathered near the helicopter to see her off. Coleman, Ramirez, and Blake stood at attention, joined by several other trainees who had learned of May's true identity in the aftermath of Williams' arrest. As May approached them, Coleman stepped forward. Commander Lynn, we wanted to thank you for the training sessions these past few days. What you've taught us, it's been invaluable. Apply it in the field, Lieutenant, May replied. That's all the thanks I need. Ramirez produced a small package wrapped in simple brown paper. We wanted you to have this, ma'am. A token of our respect. May accepted the package with a raised eyebrow. Unwrapping it carefully, she found a combat knife in a custom leather sheath. The blade was premium steel, perfectly balanced for both throwing and close-quarters combat. Engraved along the blade in small, precise letters were the words, "Appearance rarely equals capability." It's beautiful, May said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Thank you. We had it rushed from the Armory's custom shop, Blake explained, to remind you of the lessons you taught us even when we were too blind to see what was right in front of us. May slipped the knife into her belt, the weight of it familiar and reassuring. I'll carry it proudly. The helicopter's engines began spooling up, signaling that it was time to depart. As May turned to board, Coleman called out over the growing roar. Commander, will we see you again? May paused at the helicopter's door, looking back at the women who had begun as antagonists and ended as students. Count on it, Lieutenant. The Navy's a small community, and SEAL operations often require diverse talents. Train hard, keep your minds open, and our paths may cross again sooner than you think. With that, she climbed aboard the Black Hawk, securing herself in the seat as the rotor wash whipped across the tarmac. As the helicopter lifted off, May caught a final glimpse of the training facility where she had spent 3 months in disguise. The mission had been successful, the leak plug the traitor apprehended, countless lives potentially saved. But beyond the operational success, May took satisfaction in the less tangible victory. She had changed minds, challenged assumptions, and perhaps paved the way for future female operators who would face the same skepticism and doubt she had encountered throughout her career. The helicopter banked east toward Norfolk and the elite team that awaited her return. Lieutenant Commander Maylin, Navy SEAL, was going home. No more pretense, no more hiding her abilities, no more enduring the condescension of those who judged her by her appearance. As the California coastline receded behind her, May reflected on the words now engraved on her new knife, appearance rarely equals capability. It was a lesson she had taught through example, enduring months of underestimation to complete her mission. A lesson paid for in patience, restraint, and ultimately blood. But most importantly, it was a lesson learned. And in the high-stakes world of special operations, lessons learned often meant lives saved. For a SEAL commander, there could be no greater victory. The early sun glinted off the ocean, far below its light, catching the SEAL trident on May's chest, the symbol of America's most elite warriors. Among their ranks stood a 5'4" woman who had proven beyond any doubt that the true measure of a warrior had nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with hard skill and unbreakable resolve. That was a truth worth fighting for, a truth worth remembering, a truth that would perhaps change the future of special operations forever.